have thought about starting a business? Or maybe even already started one? Okay. Let's speak about your business idea and where it comes from. But before we do so, I want you to think of your dog. Let's call him Bruno. When Bruno talks, as far as we know, Bruno only speaks about things, not ideas. He will instruct other dogs to stay away from his food. He will let that nice lady dog know how much he likes her. If there's an intruder in the compound, Bruno will inform the intruder under no uncertain terms that he doesn't like him very much. But as far as we know, Bruno does not talk about ideas. Let me give you an example of an idea. When I was young, I remember being thoroughly disturbed when our parents drove us to the border town of Namanga. And when we got to the border, well, it wasn't there. I mean, I had seen the border very clearly on the map in my geography class. And here I was, standing where the map said it should be, and it simply was not there. People were walking across this so-called border with impunity, and absolutely nothing about them was different, to show that they had literally just crossed over from Kenya into Tanzania. I have since come to know that borders and the countries they contain are ideas. You see, you can't touch Kenya. You can't smell Kenya. You can't even see Kenya. And for this reason, Bruno can't speak about Kenya or Tanzania or Wakanda, for that matter.
Forever.
Thank you. Our prehistoric ancestors were very much like Bruno. But then, 70,000 years ago, a cognitive revolution took place. And suddenly, we could talk about things that only exist in our minds and in the minds of a collective group of fellow people. Let me speak to you about another type of idea. It's called a company. You can't touch a company. You can't smell a company. You can't even see a company. But it exists in my mind, and in yours, and in ours collectively. It exists in such a real way that we will even name companies, much like we do pets, like Bruno. So, how does the creator of a company take something that does not objectively exist and convince people that it does exist, and cause them to believe it so much that they do something different in their lives? Something like queuing all night to buy your product, or waking up at 5 a.m. to go and make your product. Well, I'm sure there are a number of things you could do, but I've worked with some brilliant entrepreneurs, and I've noticed one thing in particular that seems to work very well. Here it is. The best ideas never walk alone. They walk hand in hand with their ancestors. I have an Apple MacBook, which I use for work. Apple, which is worth almost $1 trillion, is a made in America company, which is in the business of selling devices. Made in America has at least two ancestors. The first one is, it is important to be loyal to your country. For Apple, that one works with Americans. With non-Americans, such as myself and most of us here, the relevant ancestor is American stuff is cool. This idea happens to have a prior ancestor known as the United States of America. Now there's a powerful idea. And it is because of that ancestor that when I turn over my MacBook, I find these words inscribed on the bottom. Designed by Apple in California, assembled in China. It is necessary, if an idea is to do well, that it does not disown its ancestors. Not all ideas work well together, however. Facebook, which is a $500 billion social media company, has been built on the idea that sharing is good. This idea does not seem to go very well with another one called privacy is important. You see, you can't share something and keep it to yourself at the same time. And we should remember that. If you want to understand a business for what it truly is, understand the ideas upon which it has been built. Here's another idea. One that we are very familiar with here in Kenya. M-Pesa. It is the world's most successful mass implementation of mobile money payments. M-Pesa began as a way to send money to other people. It turns out that most of the money was being sent by people living in cities to their relatives in rural areas. So, one of the ideas that M-Pesa has been built upon is that family matters. For this reason, M-Pesa and businesses like it will never take off in places where families are not large and cohesive. The reason that it works to build companies on the back of ancient ideas is that these ideas are proven. If an idea has been around long enough, then it has gone through all manner of persecution, and it has survived. It may even have thrived because of the testing that inevitably comes with time. The history of the religions that have lasted is a fantastic study of how some ideas can actually spread because of attempts to suppress them. So, instead of thinking up a new idea, perhaps it works far better for an entrepreneur to find an old idea, one that has been around for a long time, rather than struggling to make your idea go viral. Pick a viral idea, build your company on top of it. All the remaining ancestral ideas went viral a long time ago. Speaking of viral ideas, here is one with some serious virality. Africa needs your help. Its father is the highly principled, it is important to help people who are suffering. And its mother is the very exotic Africa. Africa is the mother of all ideas. This idea called Africa is around 3,000 years old and goes back to the time of a Greek legend about Hercules being attacked by a band of black pygmies, which he proceeded to crush. Africa's baby, Africa Needs Your Help, was born sometime in the 19th century. And she has become quite sophisticated as she has come into her own. She can most often be found walking up and down the streets of London and New York. She used to beg, but that is no longer fashionable. So now she smiles and talks about impact and transformation. A quick survey of the businesses at your local office park will show you that she is not lacking for suitors. So, one aspect of good entrepreneurship is that it is not about coming up with new ideas. It is about finding old ideas, the oldest ideas, and building a business at the scale at which it can perpetuate those ideas. That is, building a company. A company happens to be a very effective vehicle for propagating ideas. So I want to challenge you, even as you start and scale your business, to interrogate the ideas on which you will be building that business. And ask yourself if there are ideas worth spreading. Thank you.